Kabaneri of the Iron Fortress finally breaks free from its Attack on Titan cocoon and emerges as a butterfly of anime kick-assery. Never judge a book by its cover. This is a lesson which has been pounded into my head repeatedly since I was a young kid, and yet I still just saw the first episode of Kabaneri of the Iron Fortress as simply just a ripoff of Attack on Titan, done from the animators of Attack on Titan. But you know what? The second episode of the series definitely redefined the entire concept for me, and this week's episode was pretty damned awesome. The story in this week's episode is very simple, but very satisfying. All of the citizens of Aragane Station are trying to escape after all of these creepy creatures known as the kabane are making their way into the city and devouring everything in sight. You have Ayame and her samurai soldiers who are fighting their best against these creatures, as well as Mume, who definitely is without a doubt the most memorable character from this week's episode, due in part to an amazing action sequence that she takes part in. And then, of course, you have the main character, Ikoma, who is now not exactly human and not exactly kabane. You see, he is a special being which is known as a Kabaneri, basically what's in between a human and a kabane. There's also a big twist at the end of the episode where we indeed learn that Mume is also a Kabaneri, so basically they're the next badass evolution of mankind who are going to be fighting against these creatures in order to save mankind. However, humans, while in a panic, are certainly a cowardly bunch, and they will do whatever it takes to survive. So when a lot of the survivors from Aragane Station are getting ready to get on this giant steam-powered train, they realize that there's something not quite right with this Ikoma kid, and they immediately write him off as a kabane. And after even saving them from one on this great action train sequence, he ends up getting booted out of the train by this samurai by the name of Kurusu. And by booted, I mean he puts a freaking bullet in this guy's head and just knocks him out of the train. So what's really interesting here is apparently as a Kabaneri, not only are you somewhat resistant to actually turning into a kabane again, but you might even have a small healing factor, because Ikoma takes all sorts of damage in this episode, being shot, being beaten, being bit repeatedly by multiple kabane in this week's episode. And apparently him just choking himself is actually what did it. As long as the virus can somehow not reach the brain, you'll actually be able to survive, but you're gonna end up with this super weird badass glowy heart, which is like E.T. on frickin' steroids. However, Ikoma's friend Takumi is overcome with guilt and decides to literally drag him back on this train, which is getting ready to leave him behind with a little bit of help from Mume, too. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Kabaneri of the Iron Fortress? So many cool moments. Before I get to those moments, let me just comment a little bit on the animation style of this show, which is all over the place. There's a few moments where it looks sort of like traditional anime, hand-drawn, and then there are moments when it looks like they employ CG animation for some of the characters. However, it comes across more as like an old school rotoscope type of animation, where it's like they're filming a human and then tracing over them. That's actually a compliment, because the animation movements in this series look really good, especially in some of the more smaller, subtler moments, and that's really what I think is so great about this series, especially from this episode right here, the production value. It's pretty damned awesome, and it just bleeds style. It also helped that this week's episode had a lot of great action moments and a lot of just weird, memorable moments. So let's just go ahead and talk about those. When all of the people are getting ready to go onto the train, and then all of those kabane show up, Mume just shows up in this weird set of armor that we've never seen her in before, and then just starts to kick all sorts of ass. And she has a very small time limit to do this, about 100 seconds, and then she has to go bye-bye and take a nap. But what's really cool about the scene is really how it starts. How she just jumps down in front of all of these vicious, man-eating kabane. She brings out these two dual steam-powered pistols which have bayonets at the end of them. She grabs one of the heads of the kabane, cuts it, throws it in the air, and then proceeds to just run and go through this rampage of killing all of these monsters in an incredibly stylistic fashion with some great animation cues, which is so fluid and awesome you can't even just help but believe this is animation. It looks so real at times. That combined with the amazing atmosphere of the series, which is like this steampunk Japanese Edo period with all of the fire in the sky, just makes this a really beautiful looking post-apocalyptic anime awesome episode. This one was really good, guys. Not only that, but then we have the character of Ikoma, who I'm really glad he is starting to be a little different than, say, Eren from Attack on Titan. I mean, he still has his dreams of wanting to be able to save everyone by killing all of the Kabane, but the fact that he's not like a full-blown Kabane, that he's like half human, he's sort of like riding the line between that, I think that's really awesome. That and the fact that his weapon is all sorts of awesome. He gets to use it in a number of different ways in this episode, and it's always really entertaining when he does that. And all he has to do to reload it is just find some steam. They live in a steampunk world. He's got like unlimited ammo. This episode also does a pretty good job of finally introducing some of the other major side characters from the series. There is Kurusu, who is the samurai, who is very, very stern and very untrusting of Ikoma. He doesn't really know if he's a human or a monster, but at the end of the episode, when Mume actually reveals that she is a Kabaneri, I'm sure that's going to start to bring him over to their side, of course, because I'm sure she's had this affliction for quite some time, and I can't wait to see how they're actually going to try to weaponize these guys, or maybe even see if they can figure out how they can get cool Kabaneri powers as well. But Kurusu seems like he's definitely going to be a very abrasive character, but if the intro is any indication, he's going to be a lot of fun. They also got to see the return of Ayame again, who basically is just there to look super cute at just about every single opportunity and to cry and be the damsel of distress. I'm sure this character is going to be evolved a lot more as the series goes on, and I have to admit, I felt really bad for her when they actually had to use the train to run over her Gabonified dad, which was in some ways kind of funny, just how blunt it was about it, just like, just boom, big blood explosion. Speaking of which, this series has some ridiculous, over-the-top violent moments, some which are really shocking, and some of which are just kind of funny in some senses. Like, towards the end of the episode, they finally reach this part where they have to go over this bridge. In order to lower it, they have to hit this switch, and there's something wrong with the train where there's this, like, severed hand of a Kabane, which is keeping them from actually, like, moving the mechanism so that they can go over the bridge. So, someone is going to have to go outside and do that, and because they're stuck in one spot, all of these Kabane just suddenly start attacking the train from all different angles, and there's this one that jumps up in the air and it just starts spinning, and then it just rockets and explodes into the side of the train, and its whole body just explodes with its limbs going everywhere, but it actually creates an opening for the Kabane to actually go in. This scene was absolutely hilarious and was just one of the few moments which were really memorable from this week's episode of Kabaneri of the Iron Fortress. This series looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. It's got some really great character designs, the ones that are really distinctive as well. Although it does suffer from this one thing that I think a lot of other anime series suffer from, and that's that only the main characters have, like, a distinctive design to them. Everybody else just looks super generic. But then again, almost every single anime series that I've ever seen has actually suffered from this. Like, when they introduced the girl who's going to be piloting the train, the big steam train, I'm like, oh, I wonder if it's going to be the character with the super distinctive character design. No, it's not going to be the guy with the brown shirt to the left, or the dude with the gray shirt to the right. It's just something that they do all the time in anime, but that's just pure nitpicking. This whole episode right here was pretty damned awesome. Action-packed, really tense, new characters introduced, Mume's action scene was fantastic, and the concept of the Kabaneri, a half-human, half-monster type creature, which I'm sure is going to add a lot of drama to this already super melodramatic anime series. But it's also action-packed, expertly paced, and has some great animation, so this was a great episode right here. I'm giving it a 5 out of 5. I absolutely loved it. I kind of judged this series a little too early, and I can't wait to see how it's going to evolve as the series goes on, how they're going to create this big ragtag group of friends who are going to go after monsters and slay them. It's going to be awesome. Can't wait to see how they're going to do it. And if this is any indication what, like, the second season of Attack on Titan is going to look like, then bring it on, because these animators are doing a fantastic job. That Mume sequence, man, that was awesome. Check it out, guys. But if any of you did watch this week's episode of Kabaneri of the Iron Fortress, make sure to tell me what you thought about it in the comments section below. Did you have a favorite scene from this week's episode? Do you still think that this is just an Attack on Titan clone? Do you have a favorite character so far, and what do you want to see from the rest of Kabaneri of the Iron Fortress? You guys are awesome. Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and follow us on social media. Thank you guys again for watching, and as always, stay dandy, baby.